Saturday, that's a hard one. No,
I mean, I think you can go to
like frozen. I just talked to somebody that was saying again, they said they had like 12 inches. It's cold.
but enough to.
Yeah. I guess I do those, yeah. I don't need to stay this kid that fast.
I don't know.
Since. Oh no, they moved the swimming to Thursday, right?
Yeah, we're not
Wednesday.
So check this out.
Let's turn on the lights.
Okay, 6 o'clock, shall we call to order? Hey, I think Selena has the confirmation of board member attendance sheet, is that right? Yeah. We'll just, I can't call the meeting out without it. We will send it around. So the purpose of our meeting, which I hope will be very quick tonight, is to plan for compliance with the OSHA regulation regarding the COVID vaccine law that is probably going into effect on the 10th, which is before our regular meeting. So I think Mike has a proposal about how we might do that. Originally, when this happened, I thought, Mark and I talked about it, we thought we had to have a policy, but I think what would be better, because the law is, there's still some unknowns yet about the law, it would be if we have a procedure that we can then follow. And then, because there's two unknowns. One is, what is the Supreme Court going to do on the 7th? And then there's the unknown, there's the possibility that the main OSHA board will create something that's a little bit more stringent than what the federal OSHA law is. If I'm saying this wrong, so correct. But so, which could alter, our policy needs slightly. So I think the best thing for us to do would be to have a procedure that we would follow that would be compliant with the law. We have some sample procedure language from Drummond Woodson, but we wouldn't need to vote in a policy, basically. But I think Mike has a recommendation about how we proceed.
Would it be helpful to have just a little history about why the AOS would be considered a
Sure.
employee or
Yeah.
more? Because that's sort of a piece of it. When this came up, there was questions of whether or not the AOS would be considered an employer. And after some review with Drummond Woodson and taking a look at the interlocalism, it seemed like the AOS passed what is called the integrated employer test. And there are sort of 4 criteria. One would be common management, interrelation between operations, a centralized control of labor, and then a degree of common ownership. And it's not necessarily you have to hit all of those. It's sort of a totality of the organization. And we hit a lot of those on policies and procedures that are AOS-wide, our calendar, work agreements, contracts, insurance rates. So all of those things combined that folks at Drummond and Woodson to let us know that we'll be seen as an employer of over 100. So then the rule would apply to us. And then I had made some contact last week with some schools down in southern Maine. That question of a rule or policy, and I think Jessica covered that really well in the statement that, well, number one, there's a lot of uncertainty. So, this rule is potentially, and we hope, temporary because it involves vaccination for a pandemic that we're in. And so having a policy for something that might be transient probably isn't in the best interest. But if we have a rule that would allow us flexibility and then to be able to, not have it anymore if and when we're no longer sort of in the pandemic. And some of the schools that I've contacted are supporting that idea of a procedure. Nobody that I contact had created a policy to right now, and then we did reach out to NSMA. And some schools haven't done anything because there's, as Jessica said, things are in limbo. However, the DOE sent out a priority notice about half an hour ago that basically says Bosch, or the Department of Health and Safety,
Yeah.
that they are going to recommend that we follow the OSHA rule. And then they're going to have a meeting on January 18th to have further discussions. And of course, those discussions may be interrupted by what the Supreme Court says. But in their ruling, they're going to go with, we're going to adopt the OSHA, those OSHA standards. So it is my recommendation that the board basically recommend that you direct me as your superintendent to develop a procedure rather than a policy. And then that allows us to make tweaks. Our discussion would have to be whether or not we say that everybody has to be vaccinated, or that if you're not vaccinated, then you need to be in pool testing and masked. And those are the two options that OSHA has laid out.
You have to do both of those. You have
Yeah.
to be full in full testing and mask.
And masked,
Right,
yeah.
yeah.
And then I spent a little time trying to gather information of, well, what are the total number of people that might fall in that situation. And I haven't heard from all of the schools, but it'll be either between 10 or 12, 10 or 15 is probably a good number of total employees who are not vaccinated and currently not in pool testing. They're wearing masks, but over the entire AOS, I'm guessing it'll be between 10 and 15, probably closer to 10 than 15. As I get all of the information from folks. I just haven't heard from everybody yet.
Are there questions, John?
Does this include the school board as well, since we're stipended by the?
We're not employees,
You're not
so I don't think it includes us, but I'll double check. I'm pretty sure it does not include us. Yeah. Robinson?
So the OSHA mandate says that people who are not vaccinated and choose not to, they have the choice to just get into field testing.
Yes,
So it's not a
And
matter
then-
of like you do or you don't, and you're just gone.
right.
Okay.
So the question was, but it sounds like that question is being answered. The OSHA standard says you can do shot or test. Those are your two ways to go be compliant. And we verified that pool testing does count as a test. Now, there was some thought that the Bosch or whatever it's called, the main OSHA board might implement a stricter rule, but it looks that they are gonna they haven't had their meeting, but it looks like they're just gonna go with the federal OSHA rule. So I think what Mike is recommending is that so when I talked to Drummond Woodson, they said, well, you have a choice to be compliant. You can do a shot only, a vaccine only requirement, or you can do a vaccine or test requirement to be compliant. So Mike and I talked about it, and our sense was that he was recommending that we do the vaccine or test requirement. But again, we wouldn't be voting on policy saying that. We would be voting on, tonight what we'd be doing is voting to direct him to create a procedure that was compliant to the law.
So you need a motion for that?
Yes, I mean, I don't know if there's any more questions, but if not, yes, we need a motion for that.
I'll move.
Are there more? Did you move?
Yes.
So, all in favor of directing Mike to create a procedure that is compliant with the law? Okay, and then in other business, we needed to nominate and get a secretary to sign this warrant for the whatever meeting it is that we have coming up, but the yeah,
Annual
right,
public
the annual
meeting.
public meeting, right, yes, and I think someone had a person,
I had been secretary.
what's that?
I had been secretary.
You were secretary? What's that? I thought Todd was secretary.
No,
No, oh, then we don't
he
need to do
was,
that.
and then, or he was something, but I think he was for like 1 year.
Oh,
or something
okay.
like that.
Well, someone told me we needed to get a secretary, but we already have a secretary. Okay. So you need to sign this. I mean, everyone needs to sign this. Before they leave, and then you need to sign down the bottom.
Okay.
Okay, so, I don't think there's, our next, meeting is, the 13th, right? 6, is it 6 p.m.? It's the 10th.
And we have a good term.
Uh,
School's at 5, right? Yeah.
Well, we'll find, you'll get an email telling you the time. Okay, is there a, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Would everyone come sign, please?